All right, well, day 29 of the pandemic is here. That means that, I suppose technically, it's day 4 of National Poetry Month and day 4 of reading chunks of Milton to make it through April. So if you remember yesterday, we ended right after we heard from all 4 of our main princes of hell, who were proposing their different suggestions for how all of Satan's minions could rise up against God or learn how to enjoy the lives that they had to live, living, not living, whatever, their existence. So they voted, and we're picking up from there. I think today I'm going to start on book 2, line 390, and head all the way to 726. So I think it's time to start. Well have ye judged, well ended long debate, Senate of gods, and like to that which ye are, great things resolved, which from the lowest deep will once more lift us up, in spite of fate, nearer our ancient seat. Perhaps in view of those bright confines, whence with neighboring arms and opportune excursion we may chance re-enter heaven, or else in some mild zone dwell not unvisited of heaven's fair light secure, and at the brightening orient beam purge off this gloom. The soft, delicious air to heal the scar of these corrosive fires shall breathe her balm. But first, whom shall we send in search of this new world? Whom shall we find sufficient? Who shall tempt with wandering feet the dark, unbottomed, infinite abyss, and through the palpable obscure find out his uncouth way, or spread his airy flight upborne with indefatigable wings, over the vast abrupt, ere he arrive the happy isle? What strength, what art can then suffice? Or what evasion bear him safe through the strict symmetries and stations thick of angels watching round? Here he had need all circumspection, and we now no less choice in our suffrage, for on whom we send, the weight of all and our lost hope relies. This said, he sat, and expectation held his look suspense, awaiting who appeared to second or oppose or undertake the perilous attempt. But all sat mute, pondering the danger with deep thoughts. At each other's countenance read his own dismay, astonished. None among the choice and prime of those heaven-warring champions could be found so hardy as to proffer or accept alone the dread voyage, till at last Satan, whom now transcendent glory raised above his fellows, with monarchical pride, conscious of highest worth, unmoved, thus spake. O progeny of heaven, imperial thrones, with reason hath deep silence and demur seized us, though undismayed. Long is the way, and hard, that out of hell leads up to light. Our prison strong, this huge convex of fire, outrageous to devour, immures us round ninefold, and gates of burning adamant barred over us prohibit all egress. These past, if any pass, the void profound of unessential night receives him next wide gaping, and with utter loss of being threatens him, plunged in that abortive gulf. If thence he scape into whatever world or unknown region, what remains him less than unknown dangers and as hard escape? But I should ill become this throne, O peers, and this imperial sovereignty, adorned with splendor, armed with power, if aught proposed and judged of public moment, in the shape of difficulty or danger could deter me from attempting. Wherefore do I assume these royalties, and not refuse to reign, refusing to accept as great a share of hazard as of honor, due alike to him who reigns, and so much to him due of hazard more, as he above the rest high honored sits. Go therefore, mighty powers, terror of heaven, though fallen. Intend it home, while here shall be our home, what best may ease the present misery, and render hell more tolerable. If there be cure or charm to respite or deceive, or lack or slack the pain of this ill mansion, intermit no watch against a wakeful foe, while I abroad, through all the coasts of dark destruction, seek deliverance for us all. This enterprise none shall partake with me. Thus saying, rose the monarch, and prevented all reply. Prudent, lest from his resolution raised, others among the chief might offer now, certain to be refused, what erst they feared. And so refused might in opinion stand his rivals, winning cheap the high repute, which he through hazard huge must earn. But they dreaded not more the adventure than his voice forbidding, and at once with him they rose. Their rising all at once was as the sound of thunder heard remote. Towards him they bend with awful reverence prone, and as a god extol him equal to the highest in heaven. Nor failed they to express how much they praised, that for their general safety he despised his own. For neither do the spirits damned lose all their virtue, lest bad men should boast their specious deeds on earth, which glory excites, or close ambition varnished o'er with zeal. Thus they their doubtful consultations dark ended rejoicing in their matchless chief, as when from mountain tops the dusky clouds ascending, while the north wind sleeps, or spread heaven's cheerful face, the lowering element scowls over the darkened landscape snow or shower. If chance the radiant sun with farewell sweet extend his evening beam, the fields revive, their birds their notes renew, and bleating herds attest their joy, that hill and valley rings. O shamed men, devil with devil damned firm concord holds. Men only disagree of creatures rational, though under hope of heavenly grace and God proclaiming peace, yet live in hatred, enmity, and strife among themselves, and levy cruel wars, wasting the earth, each other to destroy. As if, which might induce us to accord, man had not hellish foes enough besides, that day and night for his destruction wait. The Stygian council thus dissolved, and forth in order came the grand infernal peers. Midst came their mighty paramount, and seemed alone the antagonist of heaven, nor less than hell's dread emperor with pomp supreme and godlike imitated state. Him round a globe of fiery seraphim enclosed with bright emblazonry and horrent arms. Then of their session ended, they bid cry with trumpets regal sound the great result. Toward the four winds, four speedy cherubim put to their mouths the sounding alchemy by herald's voice explained. The hollow abyss heard far and wide, and all the host of hell with deafening shout returned them loud acclaim. Thence more at ease, their minds and somewhat raised by false presumptuous hope, the ranged powers disband, and wandering, each his several way pursues, as inclination or sad choice leads him perplexed, for he may likeliest find truce to his restless thoughts and entertain the irksome hours till his great chief return. Part on the plain, or in the air sublime upon the wing, or in swift race contend as at the Olympian games or Pythian fields. Part curb their fiery steeds, or shun the goal with rapid wheels, or fronted brigades form, as when to warn proud cities war appears waged in the troubled sky, and armies rush to battle in the clouds before each band prick forth the airy nights and couch their spears till thickest legions close. With feats of arms from either end of heaven the welkin burns. Others with vast Typhoean rage more fell, rend up both rocks and hills, and ride the air in whirlwind. Hell scarce holds the wild uproar. As when Alcides from Oechalia, crowned with conquest, felt the envenomed robe and tore through pain up by the roots Thessalian pines, and Lycus from the top of Etta through into the Eboic Sea. Others more mild, retreated in a silent valley, sing with notes angelical to many a harp their own heroic deeds and hapless fall by doom of battle, and complain that fate-free virtue should enthrall to force or chance. Their song was partial, but the harmony, what could it less when spirits immortal sing? Suspended hell, and took with ravishment the thronging audience. In discourse more sweet, for eloquence the soul, song charms the sense. Others apart sat on a hill retired, in thoughts more elevate, and reasoned high of providence, foreknowledge, will and fate, fixed fate, free will, foreknowledge absolute, and found no end in wandering mazes lost. Of good and evil much they argued then, of happiness and final misery, passion and apathy and glory and shame, vain wisdom all, and false philosophy. Yet with a pleasing sorcery could charm pain for a while, or anguish, and excite fallacious hope, or arm the obdurate breast with stubborn patience as with triple steel. Another part in squadrons and gross bands on bold adventure to discover wide that dismal world, or if any clime perhaps might yield them easier habitation, bend 4 ways their flying march, along the banks of 4 infernal rivers that disgorge into the burning lake their baleful streams. Abhorred Styx, the flood of deadly hate, sad Acheron of sorrow, black and deep, Cocytus, named of lamentation loud, heard on the rueful stream, fierce Phlegethon, whose waves of torrent fire inflame with rage. Far off from these, a slow and silent stream, leath the river of oblivion rolls, her watery labyrinth, whereof who drinks, forthwith his former state and being forgets both joy and grief, pleasure and pain. Beyond this flood, a frozen continent lies dark and wild, beat with perpetual storms of whirlwind and dire hail, which on firm land thaws not, but gathers heap and ruined seams of ancient pile. All else, deep snow and ice. A gulf profound, as that Serbonian bog betwixt Damiata and Mount Cassius old, where armies whole have sunk. The parching air burns fro, and cold performs the effect of fire. Thither by harpy-footed furies hailed, at certain revolutions, all the damned are brought, and feel by turns the bitter change of fierce extremes by change more fierce. From beds of raging fire to starve in ice, their soft ethereal warmth, and there to pine immovable, infixed and frozen round, periods of time, thence hurried back to fire. They ferry over this Lethean sound, both to and fro, their sorrow to augment, and wish and struggle as they pass to reach the tempting stream, with one small drop to lose in sweet forgetfulness all pain and woe, all in one moment, and so near the brink. But fate withstands, and to oppose the attempt, Medusa with Gorgonian terror guards the ford, and of itself the water flies, all taste of living white, as once it fled the lip of Tantalus. Thus, roving on in confused march forlorn, the adventurous bands, with shuddering horror pale, and eyes aghast, viewed their lamentable lot, and found no rest. Through many a dark and dreary vale they passed, and many a region dolorous, o'er many a frozen, many a fiery Alp, rocks, caves, lakes, fens, bogs, dens, and shades of death, a universe of death, which God by curse created evil, for evil only good, where all life dies, death lives, and nature breeds, perverse, all monstrous, all prodigious things, abominable, unutterable, and worse than fables yet have feigned or fear conceived, gorgons and hydras and chimeras dire. Meanwhile, the adversary of God and man, Satan, with thoughts inflamed of highest design, puts on swift wings, and towards the gates of hell explores his solitary flight. Sometimes he scours the right-hand coast, sometimes the left. Now shaves the level wing the deep, then soars up to the fiery conclave towering high. As when far off at sea a fleet descried hangs on the clouds by equinoctial winds close sailing from Bengala, or the Isles of Ternate and Tidor, whence merchants bring their spicy drugs. They on the trading flood, through the wide Ethiopian to the Cape ply, stemming nightly toward the pole. So seemed far off the flying fiend. At last appear hell-bounds high-reaching to the horrid roof, and thrice threefold the gates. 3 folds were brass, 3 iron, 3 of adamantine rock, impenetrable, impaled with circling fire, yet unconsumed. Before the gates were sat on either side a formidable shape. The one seemed woman to the waist and fair, but ended foul in many a scaly fold, voluminous and vast. A serpent armed, with mortal sting, about her middle round. A cry of hellhounds never ceasing, barked, with wild Cerberian mouths full loud, and rung a hideous peal. Yet when they list, would creep, if aught disturbed their noise, into her womb, and kennel there. Yet there still barked and howled, within unseen. Far less abhorred than these vexed Scylla bathing in the sea that parts Calabria from the hoarse Trinacrian shore. Nor uglier follow the night hag, when called in secret. Riding through the air, she comes lured with the smell of infant blood to dance with Lapland witches, while the laboring moon eclipses at their charms. The other shape, if shape it might be called, that shape had none distinguishable in member, joint, or limb, or substance might be called that shadow seemed, for each seemed either. Black it stood as night, fierce as 10 furies, terrible as hell, and shook a dreadful dart. What seemed his head, the likeness of a kingly crown had on. Satan was now at hand, and from his seat, the monster moving onward came as fast with horrid strides. Hell trembled as he strode. The undaunted fiend, what this might be admired, not feared. God and his son accept. Created thing not valued he nor shunned, and with disdainful look, thus first began. Whence and what art thou, execrable shape? What darest, though grim and terrible, advance thy miscreated front athwart my way to yonder gates? Through them I mean to pass, that be assured, without leave of asking thee. Retire, or taste thy folly, and learn by proof, hellborn, not to contend with spirits of heaven. To whom the goblin full of wrath replied, Art thou that traitor angel? Art thou he who first broke peace in heaven and faith, till then unbroken, and in proud rebellious arms drew after him the third part of heaven's sons, conjured against the highest, for which both thou and they, outcast from God, are here condemned to waste eternal days in woe and pain? And reckonest thou thyself with spirits of heaven, hell doomed, and breathest defiance here in scorn, where I reign king, and to enrage thee more, thy king and lord? Back to thy punishment, false fugitive, and to thy speed add wings, lest with a whip of scorpions I pursue thy lingering, or with one stroke of this dart, strange horror seize thee and pangs unfelt before. So spake the grisly terror, and in shape, so speaking and so threatening, grew tenfold more dreadful and deformed. On the other side, incensed with indignation, Satan stood unterrified, and like a comet burned, that fires the length of Ophiuchus' head huge in the Arctic sky, and from his horrid hair shakes pestilence and war. Each at the head leveled his deadly aim. Their fatal hands no second stroke intend, and such a frown each cast at the other, as when 2 black clouds with heaven's artillery fraught come rattling on over the Caspian, then stand front to front, hovering a space, till winds the signal blow to join their dark encounter in midair. So frowned the mighty combatants, that hell grew darker at their frown, so matched they stood. For never but once more was either like to meet so great a foe. And now great deeds had been achieved, whereof all hell had rung, had not the snaky sorceress that sat fast by hell gates and kept the fatal key risen, and with hideous outcry rushed between. We'll wait for her words until tomorrow. I don't read this again before I read this when I record it. So I was delighted when I got to line 661 and hit Calabria from the Austrinacrian shore. After having been to Sicily a couple of summers ago. Anyway. Yeah, nothing more to add except more Paradise Lost tomorrow. We'll wrap up book 2 then. That'll take us through line 1055. So we'll pick up at 727, go through 1055, and then it'll be time to go on to book 3. Moving right along. All right. Hope your day is as lovely as this one has been.